Hi there, everyone, and welcome. We have an exciting guest for you today, Kevin Brockland of Indelible Ventures. He's been working in the venture capital industry for a long time and is working on a new fund for the Asian region. And we're going to be discussing that and other things today in our interview. Kevin, welcome. Excited to chat with you today. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Adele. Thanks for having me. I'm eager to talk about what we've been working on and the progress that we've been making here.
Yeah, it's really been a joy to watch your progress in the VC Lab program. For those of you who don't know, VC Lab is a top venture capital accelerator here in Silicon Valley, and we work with people all around the world like Kevin to launch top tier new manager venture funds. Tell us a little bit about what you're working on and what your thesis is.
Yeah, so we've launched a seed stage venture fund focused in Malaysia. You know, we're focused on tech-enabled B2B products that have the ability to scale regionally. So we focus specifically on Malaysia because it's an underrepresented region within the VC landscape in the area, but we see remarkable talent, we see fantastic infrastructure, and we want to help these companies launch onto the global platform.
Yeah, we at the Founder Institute have 3 chapters in Malaysia, and we find it really a great market because Singapore is in some ways too small to launch anything. And then, you know, you have India, China, all these Indonesia, massive markets that are in some ways too big to launch things. And Malaysia has the right size of population, the right size of tech enablement and tech adoption, that it's a great launching place for regional powerhouses to get started. What brought you to Malaysia in the first place, and what excites you about the market?
Yeah, so I came to Malaysia initially for another fund that I was working at. So I had initially taken over the Asia portfolio for a global fund manager, about 150 million in assets under management. And so in selecting Malaysia, you know, I went for all of the characteristics of quality of life, the tech infrastructure, modern amenities, well-connected airport, all of the things that I think make Malaysia competitive were all the reasons why I landed there in the first place. Southeast Asia as a region in general is booming. We've got a population of 600 million. It's rapidly coming online. It's a useful population. All of these demographic economic data just shows that in the coming years, we're going to see this region taking a larger and larger proportion of global economic growth and startup activity as well.
Yeah, I'm always amazed when I come and visit at how much further ahead in many ways, particularly Malaysia is than other parts of the world. It seems to have leapfrogged many areas in terms of even just buildings and wireless infrastructure and all that. So you had a lot of fund experience, and then you decided to start your own fund. What was the process there? You saw under the kimono. What made you want to go and do it on your own, so to speak?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I've spent basically my entire career either in consulting or in fund management, the majority in fund management, working in global roles, in regional roles, and so forth. The best part of the job is working closely with companies. And so after being in Malaysia for a while, I started getting very involved in the startup ecosystem, just to give back, not part of the reason that brought me here in the first place, but just to give back, being mentors for different startup programs and so forth. And I kept on noticing that there's this big funding gap in the market where there's a lot of programs for the very earliest stage. There's accelerators, incubators, co-creation studios, all of these different things to help turn idea into product and product to initial traction. But once they get past that stage, there's this big gap in the market where there's not a sufficient local ecosystem for that stage of funding. Once you get to Series A, Series B, there's tons of options, either Singapore or elsewhere. And so after seeing that over and over again, I finally decided to do something about it. And that's actually what brought me to VC Lab in the first place. And it's all worked out.
Yeah, so I guess a lot of the players in the region, that companies that is in the region that start doing well, they jump to Singapore, which has a thriving funding hub. But as you said, it's primarily like Series A and a bit later. So, and you don't generally go overseas for seed. So you really are in a, I guess it's over bridge, you know,
Yeah.
I've been over that bridge, by the way. It's quite a long journey to go from Malaysia to, even though it's short in span, it can take hours at times. Yeah, so like you've been in the industry for a long time, but you know, you've been working at other funds. What are some of the things that surprised you or caught you off guard or excited you about launching your own fund? Maybe things that surprised you negatively, things that surprised you positively?
I mean, on the positive side, it just means that I get to work more closely with companies. That's the thing that really gets me excited about doing this type of work, is being able to see, you know, a company go from 500K in annual revenue and seeing that scale up into the tens of millions or more. That is the best possible thing that you can end up experiencing without having to go through as difficult of a job as the entrepreneur, because that is the most difficult thing that anybody can do. The thing that surprised me in going and endeavoring on doing my own fund was, I've been in the industry a long time, but always on the investment side. So all of this black box of like the fundraising process, the nuts and bolts of launching, the mechanics of it, that was all like brand new to me. So I'm used to reviewing the pitch decks, not like going out with my own.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I interviewed another new manager the other day, and I'll share with you, he gave a great piece of advice, and I'd love to hear your answer to what advice you would give to new managers. But what he said, which was I thought was very funny, was he's like, he turned fundraising into a game whereby like, how do I just get more people to pitch? And if he gets a no, he's like, how do I, you know, it's just a game. He doesn't take it personally. How do I turn the next person like that into a yes? And as a result, he's come to love pitching, which most people hate. So what would be some of your advice to new managers, having gone through the process yourself just recently?
Yeah, I don't think I've gotten to the point to where I can say that it's my favorite thing, or that I've gamified it too much. It's not quite my personality. But I would say don't take it personally. Everyone has their own considerations in regards to timing, what they're looking for. You know, oftentimes when you're getting started out, you're reaching out to your immediate network first, hoping that they're going to lead to another layer of connections, to another layer of connections. Sometimes they don't pan out. Sometimes people that are close to you give you honest feedback, and there's no need to take it personally. You know, same thing when you're reviewing investments. You look at 1,000 and you may choose 5 of them. And it's not going to be drastically different. You have to keep that top of the funnel filled up, because you're not going to close everyone. So don't take it personally if you get a no, or if you get some feedback that you don't like.
You've been sourcing deals for a long time, reviewing deals for a long time. You know the deal landscape inside and out. How are you sourcing deals now? What kind of tips, thoughts, and ideals can you pass on with respect to how you handle deals? I'd love, you can teach so much about this, I'm sure. I'd love to hear anything you want to share.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a number of ways of sourcing deals, and a lot of people that do this type of work have kind of their own little secret sauce and their own little twist on it. I mean, in my experience, the best deals that I've ever done have always come from referrals from other founders. So it's very important to get very involved into the startup ecosystem, and get a reputation for being useful. You don't necessarily need to always be looking to close, but I mean, I did say that there's a funding gap here, but oftentimes people have other options. They can go to an angel, they can look to bootstrap. You need to be able to prove that you have a value add to bring to them. And that's what ends up kicking that referral network. Aside from that, I personally have done a lot of partnerships with some of the enabling ecosystem, with some of those earlier stage programs that I referenced that are quite active here, the accelerators, co-creation. And so developing those relationships helps give you that pipeline. And if you know the ones that run it pretty well, you can actually see the companies operate for a few months and get more visibility into how they're managing challenging situations. So when they do get ready for your funding round, you already have a better understanding of how they can deal with challenges, which makes the decision process that much easier.
Okay, that's interesting. So you're saying like one of the things you care about is how they deal with challenges. What are some of the other things that you care about when you're examining a deal, and what are some of the things that get you really excited? I know excitement's like a hard thing to explain, right? It's like, I don't know why I'm excited, just something I'm interested in. But like, if you could try to quantify why you get excited about one deal versus another and some of the things you look for, I'd love to hear your insights.
Yeah, so I always tell people, the first thing that's going to like get your foot in the door is having an attractive market opportunity. That market size, that's the thing that gets your foot in the door to see that there's enough scale opportunity. But once you've gotten past that point, I always say that I look at three things in order of priority. It's the people, it's the processes, and it's the product. And I always get the question of, why does the product come last? Well, when you're looking at early stage, in my opinion, it's a people business, because the product may end up having to pivot. You're going to have to iterate. It's going to change over time. Conditions change. We're still going through a pandemic right now, and it's honestly the companies that have the best founders are the ones that are surviving and adapting. And so you need to have those incredible founders that have that combination of passion, knowledge, and just sheer hustle. If you don't have good founders, no matter how good the product is, your odds of success are much lower. And then the process component is not that startups need a rigid process or anything like that. I view it as more of, do they have the mechanisms in place to where they're listening to the market, getting feedback? If they put out their MVP, are they actually getting proper feedback? Are they taking it? How fast are they iterating? And then lastly, it's the product. I mean, the product does need some sort of product market fit, some traction shown. But again, it's the people and processes first that give me the confidence that this is a company that's going to be able to survive years and years, and that is going to be a working relationship as an investor that is going to be fruitful.
That's very interesting, right? So it's like people, process, product. Have you ever at your stage, and would you consider investing in a pre-product company, maybe something that you saw a prototype of?
So generally speaking, we look at companies that have some initial traction. I've personally done things where there's no product as of yet, but at least out of this fund, we're looking for product and initial traction.
Right, because you're going B2B, right?
Yeah.
So what does that initial traction look like? Does that mean that they have LOIs, or do they have actual sales? Like, because B2B can be, traction is strange. You can get one customer and have a $100 million a year business, right? Literally. So especially in space. True. Literally, space is the story. I think SpaceX is like a multi-$100 billion company. It has basically one big customer and a few others, right? So
yeah, if I find that, I will get very, very excited if I can find the next SpaceX.
Right. All right. So what is B2B customer traction in your mind? If there's a hierarchy, is it LOIs? Is it sales? What is it, at the seed stage?
Yeah, I mean, it could actually mean either of those. I think probably 90% of the companies that we're looking at actually have, 5, 10 customers signed up. There's a few that we're looking at that actually have very large It really depends upon what the ticket size is of what the number of customers are. You know, we have a SaaS product that we've brought on that has 40,000 users globally, but it's a lower price point. So that fits a little bit more. Whereas, if I'm selling something that's, 100,000 ticket price, your sales cycle is going to be much longer, all of those sort of characteristics. So that I don't think there's any single number. What I'm looking for is just kind of a little bit of market validation that somebody has been demoed it, has signed an LOI, or if it's a lower ticket item and a short sales cycle, you need a few more customers in order to help validate that.
Right. So basically that people want it, right? That the businesses want it, right? Right.
Yeah,
and that's
just to demonstrate that it's not something, crazy that no one wants.
Now you're focused on Malaysia, but does that mean you're only going to be doing deals in Malaysia? Or are you going to look at some percentage of your deals in neighboring countries? I mean, Singapore is pretty well populated, maybe other areas like Cambodia. I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, so for the time being, we're seeing more deal flow than this fund is capable of handling. So sometime in the future, like one of the things that brought me to Malaysia in the first place is that it's underrepresented. And yet when you look at things like digital competitiveness, you look at the entrepreneurs, you look at the infrastructure, it's actually much ahead of a lot of the peers within the region. So there's this asymmetry between these different factors. And so, right now I'm basically entirely focused on Malaysia, but in the future, there's a lot of, I've worked in the region for long enough. I've seen a lot of interesting startups pop up in various countries throughout the region. So who knows what the future brings, but for the time being, there's more deal flow coming out of Malaysia than I can handle.
Well, we were doing some analysis at VC Lab and discussing this just the other day as well in a webinar, that sometimes having that first mover advantage, like owning a stage in a country that, or you look at Sequoia Capital, it was one of the earliest funds in Silicon Valley, and now it's one of the top funds in the world. And a lot of those early funds in Silicon Valley are now top funds in the world. And so that first mover advantage is a big deal. And you may, in fact, have it in Malaysia at the seed stage, given the data you just suggested. Couple last questions for you. So how did you learn about VC Lab and what made you decide to enroll?
That's an interesting question, because around the time that I had joined, so the idea had been popping through my head for quite some time because of what I was seeing in the market and the funding gap and all of those factors there. And so it really came out of just web searching over and over again, because the idea was there, and then more of my friends started planting the idea further, like, man, the region's growing fast. You're having these big unicorns coming out. There's more SPACs that are now interested in Southeast Asia. So it started popping up in relevance to people outside of the region much, much more, where more and more people are trying to figure out, how can I get some piece of that? How can I get an interest in that? And so after getting nudged and nudged and nudged, a bit of desktop research, and I came across it. I applied knowing that it's super competitive. I was telling everyone, I'm like, no, they get thousands and thousands of people. I'm just going to go ahead and apply for it. And as we went through, I think it helped validate in my mind and really pushed me across that line and said, all right, this is real. And yeah, it was fantastic. I got so much out of the program, to be honest with you. I'm immensely grateful for that.
Well, it's been lovely to work with you as well. And, I share your belief in the region. I've spent a lot of time in Malaysia, a lot of time in Singapore. And I believe in both the countries, and the whole region are going to be producing a lot of the innovation that the world uses over the next few years. So I do see a technical diaspora from Silicon Valley being the epicenter to having a lot of regional epicenters, and I'm confident that Malaysia will be among them. Last question for you. So you're a new manager. There are other new managers out there in the world. Any kind of quick advice that you would give a new manager thinking to start a fund, maybe back a few months ago where you were before you made so much great progress?
Yeah, I think the hardest part is getting started, to be honest with you. So I mean, if it's one of those things. It's the same if you're an entrepreneur trying to build a company. You just have to take that leap of faith and start doing it. I think the advice is a bit different, you know, when if you're located in one of the already developed hubs or one of the countries that already have developed hubs and just looking at a different city versus coming from a country that perhaps does not have as vibrant of an ecosystem or is still in the early stages of its growth. I think a lot of hesitation will come and say, my country or my location is just not ready for it. But if you're seeing the talent there, if you're seeing that there's opportunities, jump in. There's a need for it. The amount of good that you can do, not just for your investors, but for the ecosystem, for those entrepreneurs, for your limited partners, you just got to jump in and do it. And the ecosystem will grow behind you.
What inspiring words, you know, and take that first step to change the world for the better. And I'm so happy we can be helping and supporting however we can. And I'm so proud of what you've accomplished. Thank you so much, Kevin, for taking some time today.
Thanks, Adeo. It's been fantastic.
Take care. Bye, everybody.